Again, you are here for the call to arms and the healthcare cybersecurity arms race. Our presenter today is Kevin Toby. He's our technical sales engineer, a wealth of knowledge and experience. So I will pass that on to him to go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Holly.
You're welcome.
So today, what we're going to cover is the current cybersecurity minefield. Believe me, it is a minefield. We're going to take a look at the pillars of building a strong cybersecurity defense. We're going to talk about how to know if your cybersecurity stacks up, and then maybe talk about offer some ideas for what's next. Like any journey, we want to make sure we all understand the landscape before we embark the field of battle, if you will. So I'm going to start today's session by talking about what's happening in the healthcare security landscape to give us an idea of the obstacles we're facing. Your healthcare IT is under attack by seasoned professionals who make it their business to steal your data, your money, and your reputation. Here are some sobering statistics. The cost of a breach is up 42% since 2020. Talk about inflation. For 83% of companies, it's not if the breach will happen, but when. And these are the kind of statistics that keep cybersecurity pros and business owners up at night. Ignoring or minimizing cybersecurity needs is no longer an option. Below is a sample of the security vulnerabilities published by the Center for Internet Security, and this list comes from last month, February 2023. Note here that there's advisories for Google Chrome, Clam Antivirus, Mozilla Firefox, Adobe, Apple, Google Android. Microsoft generally makes this list as well. This gives you an illustration of the continuous nature of threats that arise and the need to have a process to deal with these new vulnerabilities.
Kevin, we're still seeing your first slides, so.
Oh my gosh.
They're not moving through.
Thank you for that.
Of course.
All right. What did I do? I'm going to, here we go. I'll just do it this way. All right.
Perfect. There we go.
Okay. So this is the first slide with some data on it. As I mentioned, 42% increase in the cost of a breach. Those are some big numbers. And so, some of the latest the breaches that we got notified of last month, it's not just one or two, it's many, many. All right. So I'm going to credit David Stossel with this from House in the Cloud. I love this analogy. Think of security about in a way that how would you protect your home? And we're going to equate this to your business. And so in your home, we lock doors and windows. We put locks on everything. We put in alarms, maybe a dog, have the alarm call the police, participate in a neighborhood watch. We buy insurance. We put in other devices, doorbells, baseball bats, yard signs, motion sensors, and really try to build a layered defense to protect for home security. Very, very common practice. So our object is to protect, detect, and respond to these threats. Well, we also need to identify the things we need to protect: our family, our pets, our collectibles, our valuables, and we need to recover if and when a break-in occurs. And it's the same with business security, securing your cybersecurity estate. So let's talk about the security challenge. Assume that threat actors are pros and very good at what they do. They come in all sizes and shapes, from amateurs trying to score some money to business syndicates holding a corporation's data for ransom or blackmail. Even nation states are threat actors trying to raise money or taking more nefarious actions. Whomever they are, passwords and antivirus just aren't, they're just speed bumps to them. Breaches most often occur at the endpoint. An endpoint is most commonly a PC or wireless phone that the user interfaces with to access data and programs. These must be protected. What is required today is a rapid response to attacks to minimize the damage and slam the door shut on the threat. Today, all our data isn't located in secure buildings and behind secure firewalls. We access data from laptops in the coffee shop, our home PCs, our wireless phone, and basically anywhere from on the planet. These endpoints are exposed to the unsecure internet, and data on those devices needs to be secured. Be aware that you cannot just contract with someone to make your system secure. Security is a shared responsibility between the manufacturers of the hardware, the software publishers, the support vendors, and the companies and users. All these organizations have a role to play in securing your data. So risk tolerance involves identifying risks and then classifying those risks based on how much data how much damage they do if a breach comes to pass. You need to assess your data and rank the impact of varying risk categories from catastrophic to critical, high, medium, and low. This knowledge helps establish what and how much a company can tolerate for each identifiable risk. It's a measure of what's often called business risk appetite, or sometimes business risk tolerance. This knowledge helps establish what and how much a company can tolerate. The size and scope is specific to the environment and assesses what is vulnerable. And the amount of data available at risk needs to be documented to assess the potential impacts of the operation of your business. Knowing what needs to be protected guides you in your security measures. So let's take a look at the pillars of cybersecurity. We rely on technology for patient care today, and it's important to recognize that cybersecurity is now an element of patient care. We need to understand vulnerabilities in each of these areas. People, we need to make sure employees follow security processes and procedures. Endpoints, the servers and computers employees use need to be protected. Applications, all of them need to be protected and backed up. Data, we'll talk about encryption and other elements of data protection, and of course your network as a whole. Underlying all these vulnerabilities, we need to make sure we have a solid security strategy and a worst case plan for incident response. Now let's go through each of these in more detail. These are the steps you'll take to improve your security. We start with making sure that staff, including providers, are trained in security awareness. Employees are your biggest risk. They're busy, they're under stress, they're focused on patient care, and criminals know this. Social engineering takes advantage of that, and it's just too easy for employees to make a mistake that can be incredibly costly for your business. Employee training, backed up by testing, are critical. You need to be able to identify and address attacks targeting users, whether it be phishing, spam, or social engineering, and then test your staff on their competence. A phishing simulation program, which sends emails to employees throughout the year that replicate the approaches that hackers take, is a great way to provide training and measure improvement for management. This kind of program helps them understand the risks and learn to identify hacking techniques, so they're not fooled into granting access to unauthorized people, systems, or applications. Phishing simulation is one of the easiest and most effective and cost-effective measures you can take. So if you're not doing it, it's a very strong step. And also make sure you review your company's security policies and procedures at least annually with all staff. Next, we look at endpoints, the servers and computers your employees use to do their jobs. In the past, we thought antivirus and anti-malware software was all we needed. Today, antivirus is essentially dead. If you're still using traditional AV, it's a good chance that it may catch up to 25% of the malware that gets to your network. That's just not enough. The best investment is to get endpoint detection and response agents, or what we call EDR. They're able to stop and prevent malicious activities, services, and program execution within your environment. EDR should also come with 24/7 monitoring and support to ensure that when you do have an event or incident, they're quickly and accurately managed, and you're able to determine what's a false positive and what's a breach. In my opinion, EDR without 24/7 monitoring by a security operations center is half a solution. One of the other protections you should consider as part of your overall security plan is to block access to known bad sites. Cyber criminals often use legitimate websites to inject malware and harvest user credentials. Website filtering or DNS proxy solutions such as Cisco Umbrella or Microsoft Defender for Cloud know where these sites live and will prevent you and your users from accessing these sites and the malware that lives there. I want to spend a little extra time talking about endpoint detection and response, or EDR, as it's such a big component of security these days. One of the strengths of EDR is the ability to protect against cyber attacks by means of real-time autonomous reactions. It recognizes a threat on its own before it can spread to your network. It uses artificial intelligence to identify anomalies and protect in real time. It has the capability to hunt for threats on your PCs and even in your network before those threats can infect your environment. And EDR can even roll back to a prior version should that become necessary. EDR has the capability to protect, detect, and respond to cybersecurity threats. It protects by using artificial intelligence at the endpoint. It replaces traditional or legacy antivirus programs. It can protect your devices. It can protect devices attached to your PC, including the network, USB devices, and even Bluetooth controlled devices. It has the capability to dynamically whitelist and blacklist applications, and it provides threat hunting capabilities that can perform deep file inspection and aid your security personnel. It detects threats by using artificial intelligence to hunt down malicious actions at the endpoint. It protects against malware, and it detects acts on files or are brand new and not documented, and it all occurs in real time. And it has the capability to respond. It can reverse and remove malicious activity, and it allows devices to defend and heal themselves by stopping processes, quarantining the device, and if necessary, remediating the damage or rolling it back to an earlier point in time. So what makes up a managed EDR solution? We've talked about EDR software, but that's just one component of a managed EDR platform. Some people call it XEDR or MEDR. Let's take a look at that. So EDR integrates very well with other security solutions. Security incident and event management, or SIM software, provides threat intelligence to security experts, and EDR has the ability to provide signals to the SIM system for analysis by these security experts. EDR is a source of intelligence to your security team to help them identify new threats. But it doesn't deploy to your PCs by itself. So it's a responsibility of your IT team to make sure it's deployed across your organization. It does threat hunting, which involves hunting for threats that may not be identified by EDR at first, and utilizes tools such as SIM and SOC. And then the SOC, or Security Operations Center, provides 24/7 monitoring and investigation of every security threat received. It's a very important component of a managed EDR platform. And then you layer on a computer security incident response team, what we call CSIRT. That is a mouthful, by the way. And this provides incident response, ransomware mitigation, and forensic investigation services. More on that later. So some of the other things as far as this pillar of endpoints: drive encryption, especially devices that leave the confines of the office and can be lost, need to be encrypted. Patching all applications and keeping operating systems updated is very important. Mobile device and application management of all remote devices applies the security policies of your local network to remote devices and makes them much safer to be in the wild, if you will. And backup data stored on endpoints, either using backup software or storing files on the cloud using things like OneDrive and SharePoint, needs to be considered. Next, let's talk about applications. Vulnerability scans are important as they actively search for vulnerabilities in applications and systems. You can't protect or fix what you don't know about. A vulnerability scan can look at known vulnerabilities on apps and devices and recommend actions to be taken to remedy any found vulnerabilities. The principle of least privilege means that you restrict users to only the data and applications that they need to do their job. By restricting their access, you make it more difficult for a hacker to get a foothold in your system. Your company should not allow anyone, just anyone, to install applications without proper vetting of the app and authorization by your network administrator. And I can't say enough about keeping your systems up to date with the most recent patches, but even with tools like Auto Update, this does not guarantee security updates on all applications and devices. Firewalls, access points, and even IoT devices need to be patched as well, as they are targets of the hackers also. Some of the other items in regards to applications: make sure your cloud applications are secured, especially Microsoft Office 365. This involves configuring MFA, conditional access, and best practices around Exchange and Azure AD. Secure your SQL databases using security best practices. For applications hosted in the cloud, make sure they're protected by MFA and that the vendor meets SOC 2 or high trust security standards. Again, multi-factor authentication, MFA for short, and I'll use that from now on, should be a requirement for all apps. Combining MFA with conditional access and single sign-on or SSO greatly increase your security. Legacy applications such as old EHR systems used for historical purposes are often no longer supported or updated. These need to be isolated on their own network and retired as soon as possible. And make sure you patch your applications on a regular basis. As we move along our security path here, we come to protecting data. Encryption is one of the oldest controls in HIPAA requirements and assessments, but it boils down to the ability to know what data is important, what type of data is it PHI, and where the data is located. All of that helps determine what to encrypt. We recommend encryption of all servers and at a minimum, the machines that leave your building, notebooks, phones, things like that. Also be sure to encrypt any and all emails leaving your email domain that contain PHI and other sensitive data. And it's also vital to make sure there's an offline or air-gapped backup in case your infrastructure is breached. Air-gapped backups are much more difficult for an attacker to assess and render useless when you need them the most. Other security measures around data include data loss prevention. This prevents data from accidentally being shared or transferred to users internally or externally who do not have permissions to view that set of data. Data governance, things like retention policies, which provide a means to control how long a data is retained, are important. Data sensitivity labels classify the sensitivity of data and who can access that data. And then mobile device and application management provide policies to fence in company data, whether it lives on company devices or user-owned devices, BYOD, such as a smartphone or tablet. And then make sure all data assets are backed up and that those backups are air-gapped or offline or off your local network. There are many excellent cloud solutions for backing up data. And finally, physical security of your servers and network infrastructures need to be accounted for. You know, is it in a secure closet? Is it in a data center? You don't want anybody just wandering around your core data. And now let's talk about your network overall. Once we understand the applications and how they're delivered to users, as well as where the data lives, we can now apply control. Access controls are crucial at many levels, and most applications provide a way to address this. But with more remote workers, teleworkers, or contractors, their access needs to be monitored and controlled. Using MFA, conditional access, and role-based authentication controls are the primary tools to control access. Again, this is something you'll need to show you're addressing for cyber insurability. And also consider the need to manage data on a user's personal wireless device. Often users have access to sensitive data from their personal cell phones. Email, for example, maybe links to OneDrive and SharePoint. These devices need to be managed and the data protected using mobile application management or mobile device management tools. We find many businesses that allow devices to use the internal or production wireless network to get online. They've got the password, so they're using it when they're at work to surf the net, read their email, etc. This means that any device not under the control of IT may be able to introduce malware to your network and spread to systems in your environment. Did you know that there's more malware written for Android than Windows today? So phones should absolutely be excluded from accessing your internal or business network. Segregation is also a useful tool for securing networks. We see many legacy EHR or other systems we still need to access, but its data is read-only. We need to protect this in some fashion, and segmenting is one way to do that. Segmenting or micro-segmenting a network to limit who can see legacy systems creates an island for that workload to protect it and reduces exposure until it can be upgraded, replaced, or hopefully retired. Other security tools and strategies to secure your network include SIEM, Security Information Event Management. We talked about this a little bit, the ability to collect signals and find anomalies and report it to your security team. IPS, or Intrusion Prevention. It detects and prevents identified threats and is most often deployed at the network edge or the firewall. Firewall management is responsible to make sure that firewall firmware, software, and policies are managed and updated. Too often firewalls get installed and forgotten. Vulnerability scanning scans endpoints, servers, and network devices for known vulnerabilities. Penetration testing utilizes tools and skills to attempt to penetrate a network or system to test its security. VPNs need to be managed for security and access control as well. Network, server, and endpoint inventories are critical. You need to know what you're protecting. Backups are critical for disaster recovery purposes, be it a ransomware incident, environmental, or some type of natural disaster. And cloud access security brokers prevent access to malicious websites and broker access to the web to make sure that these sites are safe. These are tools such as Cisco Umbrella or Defender for Cloud Apps. So they help keep you away from the malicious sites. Now you have an idea of how we can secure your data estate and how to address critical points of vulnerability appropriately. But there's a good chance you may still experience a breach, and at that point, it's all about how to manage it. So let's talk through this critical line of defense and how all of your planning comes together to help you respond and recover. We've covered a lot of ground highlighting security defenses available to your organization. Now let's turn our attention to strategy and how to go about building your cybersecurity defenses. I'd recommend starting with building a 3-year security plan or roadmap. If all this seems overwhelming to you, consider bringing in a security consultant to help you plan. As we can see in the healthcare business, make sure HIPAA compliance is factored into your plan. Any cyber insurance requirements should be detailed and made part of your roadmap. Make sure critical components such as MFA and EDR are given priority. The insurance company is watching. And what is your plan for disaster recovery and downtime due to system failures? Disasters such as ransomware attack, natural disaster, or system failures can hit patient care and your business very hard. And make sure you create an incident response plan. In the probable event of a security or other incidents, having a ready plan to turn to will pay dividends. The NSIT HIPAA Security Toolkit application provided by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, is intended to help organizations better understand the requirements of the HIPAA security rules, implement those requirements, and assess those implementations in their operational environment. Target users include, but are not limited to, HIPAA-covered environments, business associates, and other organizations such as those providing HIPAA security rule implementation, assessment, and compliance services. So you need to conduct an accurate and thorough assessment of potential risks and vulnerabilities to the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of electronic protected health information held by your organization. Make sure in your assessment you identify PHI within your organization and all external sources of created or shared PHI. Also understand the threats to those systems housing PHI. Be sure to identify sources of risk. This includes vulnerabilities and threats, including natural threats, human threats, or environmental. Determine if your systems are prepared for these risks and the actions you'll take when an event occurs. And finally, review and update your assessment as needed. And a lot of what we do is based upon these principles provided by NIST. I've gotten off script here. Okay, there we go. I'm back in sync. Cyber insurance is another risk management tool. Should there be a cyber event that disrupts your operations, a cyber insurance policy can help you manage that risk. But there are strings attached. Insurance companies need to minimize their risk as well by making sure organizations are implementing security measures to prevent breaches and other disasters. Key components that are critical for cyber insurance include MFA, EDR, backup, and encryption. And in some cases, we're seeing insurers ask about protections such as SIM. So if you're starting at ground zero or just starting to bring your cybersecurity defenses online, consider the following. Keeping your software and hardware up to date goes a long way to securing your systems, as newer and patched systems are inherently more secure. Implement multi-factor authentication. This helps prevent lateral movement of a breach to other systems and accounts. Manage remote services. Secure access to your data estate is critical and involves making sure VPNs, user accounts, and access protocols are managed and secure. Perform phishing training. Users are targeted constantly with phishing emails and need to be trained to recognize and deal with the phishing messages. Use a password manager. One of the best password policies you can have is that all accounts should have a unique password for every site they access. Password managers can help with this, or better yet, consider implementing single sign-on to manage access to accounts and applications. Also consider the use of passwordless login technologies such as PINs, fingerprint scanners, or facial recognition.
I have a question, Kevin, for you.
Yes, yeah.
What is the industry standard SLA and MTTR, meaning mean time to repair and recovery for a security incident?
Well, I don't know that there's an industry standard so much as, I think you need to look at that for your individual practice. And the reason being is that, we can do pretty well. But obviously, the shorter the time to recovery, the more expensive. You have to have more systems in place for recovery. You have to have a well-rehearsed incident response plan. We're going to talk about that here a little bit, and that takes time and money. You need to do a tabletop. A tabletop is like a simulated recovery plan, and so there's a lot of components that go into that. and the more you put in, the more more it's going to cost. So it's really just a matter of what you're willing to bear. Hopefully that answers the question. And let's talk a little bit about that. That's a good segue into this. So a cyber incident should run like a trauma incident. Many of the same tenets that apply to an emergency apply to cyber incident response. There are two very strong, sometimes opposing forces at play when these kinds of incidents occur. Naturally, the recovery of your data is primary concern, but the preservation of evidence and data that you're going to need to complete a forensics analysis is just as critical. And the more prepared you are for a cyber incident, just like any emergency, the better the expected result and the more money you're going to save too. Recovery in the event of ransomware has the opposing force of, do you pay the criminals, or is your security at a level where you can recover your systems through other methods and get your systems operational? Our goal is to provide you a roadmap that protects you and gives you the best chance of recovering your systems without paying the ransom or experiencing significant downtime. Equally important is the preservation of technical data so that you can identify how the breach occurred, so that gaps in your security can be corrected. This is required so malware can be eradicated from your environment and the data needed by the legal teams, the regulators, the HR teams, PR teams, and insurers preserved. A lot of people get involved in these incidents. The actions that the technical response team takes in the initial hours can dictate whether you're able to preserve required data that you need or if it's lost forever. In order to deliver on your recovery and preservation requirements or goals, there are 6 critical aspects to an incident response plan. Have an internal team that is responsible for these incidents. Make sure there's a leader and that you have covered the legal, technical, HR, and internal and external communication elements required for your practice. Know those requirements in advance. Have the right external experts in place well in advance of a breach. Make sure that you utilize things such as a NOC, a Network Operations Center, a SOC, a Security Operations Center, and that you have a CSIRT team in place. Also include your insurer or insurance broker and public relations team as well. Remember, though, that not all breaches are created equally. I'd always recommend that you define what is a small, medium, and large breach within your environment and create a plan that is appropriate for each type of breach. You don't have to pull out the stops for everything, but know what's important. Each breach type should have a corresponding set of actions and a checklist. And make sure you know your legal or regulatory obligations and their respective deadlines. Update your plan regularly, at least on an annual basis, but more frequently if there's a key personnel or regulatory change. And finally, practice, at least annually, but the more frequently, the better. And
we're still on the same slide, Kevin.
Oh, my apologies.
There you go. Thank you.
Do I have to go back and start all over again? No, I won't. Make sure you practice. That'll improve your response. And one of the most important external data security resources, if you suffer a breach, is your insurer or insurance broker. They're a critical participant and part of your supply chain. Keep them in the loop. I'm making a little change here. Let's conclude with what we've learned in this fight through our own experience and the knowledge of other experts. What we know is that bad actors' ability to hone in on cybersecurity gaps in both systems and people has proved unnervingly frequent and successful. They have very effective tools that allows them to launch widespread attacks and cripple businesses and practices. As we look back at the common cause of cyber incidents, we continue to emphasize that you must protect your endpoints. You must educate your users and implement tools to protect all endpoints. Have a plan on how you will implement MFA and EDR as quickly as possible. Know your supply chain and ensure whoever is supplying and managing your technology is qualified and certified to do the job that you need to protect your practice and preserve your business in the case of an attack. Know your weak points and have a plan on how to strengthen your defenses. And have a plan in case of an incident that is up to date, practice, and can be executed quickly and accurately. Sure, I've said plan a lot. It's critical to isolate potentially compromised devices from the rest of your network as quickly as possible in order to limit the damage of an attack. It's equally important to ensure you have forensic information from that device so that you can determine the entry point in addition to the breadth of the attack so that you can stop it. Simply stopping it on one device does not guarantee that there are not other components of the attack within your environment. And finally, thoroughly clean or rebuild the environment and add additional security tools if they don't already exist. This approach has paid off in multiple experiences. This is just a brief mention of how MTS works with our clients to shore up their security defenses. Security is baked into our services as healthcare is the #1 target of cyber criminals and now is part of IT operations for all companies, but in particular, healthcare. Incident response is often overlooked, but a critical component of any security defense program and part of what sets MTS apart as a service provider. Having that knock and SOC is just absolutely critical, and the ability to bring in a CSIRT team, that cybersecurity incident response team, really shortens timelines and gets you back into operation quickly. You really don't have time during a breach to go back and put all these things together. You've got to have them ready to go. And with that, if you haven't, now you have an idea on how you can build your security maturity model, addressing critical points of vulnerability. And there's a good chance you may still experience a breach at that point. It's all about how you manage it.
All right, I do have a couple questions. Number one, let's see. This is all great, but what if we do not have the budget to handle it? What do we do? What do you suggest?
Well, a couple things on that is that security isn't optional anymore. The threats are just too real. We saw the stats that basically you have an 83% chance of being breached in the next 5 years. It's really not a question of if, it's a question of when. And so by not having security measures in place, you put your practice, your business at risk. And these incidents are not cheap to overcome, especially when you have all the regulations of HIPAA and all that. People are watching, people are looking. It's not something you can just sweep under the rug. So, my response is, it's unfortunate, but it's something that you are going to have to invest in. I will say I would start with, there are some things that are a little bit easier to start with that give you good protection. I would make sure I have MFA turned on every system that has it. I would make sure that I deploy EDR and make sure you include that SOC. Backups are absolutely critical. That's kind of a starting place for you. You have to back up anyway, but so that's, you have that piece. MFA is built into a lot of things, or you may have to buy some MFA. Again, that's not a high-priced item. EDR a little bit more, but again, the protection you get is pretty strong. And a lot of it really doesn't cost any money. It just costs time. Putting in place policies and procedures. You're not buying products, but you are investing time to make sure people are doing their job properly, that they're using good password policies, that they know that what a phishing email looks like and things like that. So some of it is not that expensive, but does require an investment of time.
Got it. Thank you. All right. And the next one I have, where do you often see shortcomings in a practice's security stack, as you call it?
we've been on a hunt ourselves to find it, to make sure everybody has MFA turned on. People resist it a little bit because it's a little slower to get in. I put in my login password, now I got to have my phone with me, or I've got to look up that email to get in, and it's a hassle. I get it, but it'll save your bacon. That's one thing. Can you repeat that question again? I got off of that and forgot the rest of it.
Sure. Where do you often see shortcomings in a practice's security stack?
Yeah, MFA, relying on traditional antivirus is a shortcoming. It's not going to protect you. We've been using these products for a long time, and a lot of them have evolved, but that moving to EDR is there's a lot of bang for the buck there. So you need to move off those practices, and then off those old AVD antivirus systems, and then having air-gapped backups. I've seen people with backups. Well, we back up locally, and we take our system off-site. Well, that is air-gapped, but the frequency of backup may be limited in that regard. So we really like cloud backups, because those they are off your local network. They can be protected, and in the event of a breach, the hackers go after those backups, because they don't want you to be able to restore. They want you to pay the ransom. So those are the biggies in my mind.
Okay, and then I do have a comment here that somebody brought up a statistic. I believe that one key statistic that I read about some years ago is that it takes less than 1 minute from the time that a new PC is unboxed and put on the network before a port is exposed to an intrusion or an attack. So again, not an if, but a when.
Yeah, and exactly. And so, security it's a key component. I mean, it's just the world we live in now, and as I've stated, I think I stated in the presentation, it's an arms race, and you don't want to be on the wrong side of that.
Correct. Were you done with the slides? Did you have any others to go over? Did we catch up?
I don't. Nope.
All right. Any other questions while I have everybody here on the line? We thank you very much for attending today and hope that you got some good information. And again, you will receive an email with a link to both the recording, I believe, and the slides, so you can review this information at your leisure afterwards. If anybody has any questions or needs some further help on the security side, maybe some guidance, feel free to reach out to us if you know your account rep or your business development rep, or feel free to send an email to info@medtechsolutions.com. We are here and happy to assist in all ways that we can. And again, thank you for your time today. You guys have a great rest of your week.